If you're interested in supporting the channel, there are two things you can do. Flipside Gaming is offering a 10% discount for any order $10 or more if you use the promo code VOIDMAGE on their website. That is VOIDMAGE in all caps. I will also have an affiliate link to tcgplayer.com. If you use that link, any purchase you make on that website will go towards supporting the channel. I appreciate the support. Also hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss any videos. And there's also the Commander Void Patreon page, so go ahead and check out the tiers. Hopefully I have something that works for you. Thanks for your support. Hello everyone, Commander Void here. Want to go over one of the most powerful sets in Magic the Gathering's history, especially if you're looking for the impact on the Commander format. Now, I'm not doing the entire block, although I could. That video would have to be much longer. I would be more tempted to do a top 30 because the Urza's block has so much power, not just in the first set, but things like Palinchron, Academy Rector, and the follow-ups. Power that you're likely never going to see again. And a lot of that has to do with the reserve list. A lot of reserve list rares are from the Urza's block. So let's start it off here with the honorable mentions. This is just a fantastic set, incredibly deep, and you're just going to see that in the honorable mentions. Phyrexian Tower is a quality staple in a lot of black decks. It doesn't come into play tapped, which is a big negative for a lot of lands in Magic's recent history. You could sacrifice a creature to add 2 black mana to your mana pool, which pretty much means it is a land that taps for 2 mana. In most decks that are going to play this, you have no problem sacrificing 1 creature, just sacrifice a token. And then there's Carpet of Flowers. This is a card that doesn't see that much play in Commander, but when it does, it's usually in competitive EDH. Not a reserve list rare, it's just an uncommon, but it's around a $20 uncommon, so most people who do play green tend to stay away from it. It just provides you with so much mana because a lot of people play islands. It doesn't just provide you with green mana, it can provide you with any kind of color, giving it that extra bit of flexibility. Back to Basics is a pretty mean card to play, and also a really effective one in Commander, preventing non-basic lands from untapping. Well, that's so many lands in the format, and unless someone's playing a precon deck, it's hard to imagine someone being able to play Magic despite this. A lot of people's mana fixing comes from their non-basic lands. And then there is the Peregrine Drake Great Whale problem. Cards like these have insane combo potential, a lot of why you hear people complain about Deadeye Navigator. ETBs tend to be good, these are beyond good. So, onto the top 10 list. Number 10 is Priest of Titania, a staple in literally every elf deck. We're so used to the Llanowar elves, the 1-mana elves that tap for 1 mana. All you have to do is just pay another mana, and you have pretty much the same kind of deal here. You're tapping an elf for even more mana. This time, though, it's a green for every elf on the battlefield. It's worth noting, though, that it's not just your elves, it's all of your opponent's elves. It's a pretty common creature type, so make sure you pay attention. You could get a ton of mana. Definitely worth it, and even in non-elf decks, you do have a chance of netting a bunch of mana off of a creature like this. Number 9 is a card I think is a bit better than Back to Basics. If you really want to be mean, Contamination is the way to go. It doesn't stop them from getting mana, it just forces them to have black mana. The cost of having to sacrifice a creature every now and then is worth it. It's sort of like Phyrexian Tower, you're likely going to have creature fodder in the same deck you're playing it in, and while I don't always agree with stacks, this was just an all-around incredibly powerful set with some really overpowered cards that seem unfair. So as we get later on into this list, you're going to see cards that are just crazy over the top powerful that might make Contamination look a little more tame. Number 8 is Serra's Sanctum. The lands in this set are so good. While Tolarian Academy is banned, Serra's Sanctum is not, so if you are playing an enchantment-themed deck, make sure you take advantage of this awesome land. It is around the $100 mark. It's a reserve list card, so, you know, that's why. But giving you pretty much the enchantment equivalent to another card you know is probably coming on this list is pretty ridiculous. While getting a bunch of white mana isn't really the same, you're still getting a ton of mana for just tapping a land. Doesn't even come into play tapped. You are most certainly never going to see cards like these again, and it's not just because they're on the reserve list, it's because they're way too powerful. Number 7 is Gamble. The red tutor that is never a sure thing was originally printed in Urza's Saga. and even as risky as it is, tutors are still a big deal in the format, especially in red where you don't have that much precision. If you can get one card from your deck and not have to to reveal it. That's such a big deal in a deck that typically doesn't excel at these things. But of course, because it is a 1-mana tutor, you're going to see it in more than just mono red decks. It's no vampiric tutor, it's no demonic tutor, but in certain situations it could be better than something like enlightened tutor, because it does let you get whatever card you want. Number 6 is Windfall, another card that's originally from Urza Saga. For pretty much every reason why you would think Wheel of Fortune is one of the best Magic cards ever, Windfall is really not that far off. While it is in mono blue doesn't have the same card draw issues that red can sometimes run into. You are getting what is pretty much the same effect. The difference being the number of cards you draw afterwards. If nobody has 7 cards in their hand when they discard, well, it's not going to give you the same number of cards as a Wheel of Fortune. But it has even more potential when you could get someone to discard their hand that has 15 cards in it. Everybody draws 15. It is functionally going to be the same card in the same deck you're going to play a Wheel of Fortune in. The biggest difference being is that it's a blue card that's also an uncommon and incredibly easy to get your hands on. People only really talk about Wheel of Fortune because it's a reserve list card. That's just going to keep going up. Number 5 is Sneak Attack. Bet you didn't expect to see 2 red cards on this list. Sneak Attack is ridiculous in the right deck. Who would have thought that the idea of paying 1 mana to cheat a creature into play and give it haste would be so good? In the same format where we have Eldrazi's, with Annihilator, where we have combo decks, where we have decks focused on sacrificing, the card is just a powerhouse no matter what kind of deck you want to put it into. Whether the goal is combat or combo, I think it's one of the best red cards ever made. And number 4 is Gilded Drake. Now I mentioned Priest of Titania, but Gilded Drake has to be the best 2-mana creature in the entire game. It's another reserve list card, but even beyond that, you are paying 2 mana for a creature that you're exchanging for what is likely going to be the best creature on the battlefield, which on its own is still a pretty good thing for just 2 mana. But when you consider the decks that are capable of abusing this, it gets even more disgusting. A lot of blink decks have ways of blinking your opponent's creatures, so if Gilded Drake is one of your opponent's creatures by then, you could have it come back into play under your control, do the exchange all over again, and hopefully keep doing this. The only real risk involved is giving this to one of your opponents, where they could just sacrifice it or attack another opponent and get it removed in combat. These cards are considered so powerful because of the mana involved. Just paying that 2 mana is such a big deal, where you rarely see ways of stealing opponents' creatures that are this cheap. Then number 3 is Time Spiral. If you thought Windfall was good, imagine having a bit more expensive Time Twister that also lets you untap your mana. If you've been milled out this game and you need some way of shuffling your graveyard back into your library, this pretty much resets the game. Not only that, but you get a fresh hand and you get more mana to work with. So you could do something else like Windfall, which is really disgusting in decks like the Locust God or Nekasar the Mindraiser. Drawing cards is always a good thing, and while it is pretty symmetrical, it follows that trend in Urza's block where you pretty much just played the card for free because you get to untap the lands. One of the most overpowered things about the set and the block as a whole. Then number 2, one of the most powerful cards, period, Yawgmoth's Will. One of the best black cards ever, maybe second to Demonic Tutor. Yawgmoth's Will allows you to go back into your graveyard. Whatever worked for you before, you get to replay those spells. Fast mana, tutors, card draw. Maybe it's a combo piece that got countered. A late game Yawgmoth's Will is a win con. It's the whole idea of using your graveyard as a resource, even if it's only for 1 turn. You could have a hand that's completely empty after casting a Yawgmoth's Will and still potentially win the game. That says a lot about its power. And it's not like recursion spells where you just bring a creature back. Since this lets you play the cards, it could be anything. It could be a planeswalker, an enchantment, a land, one of the more versatile black spells that, again, because of the reserve list, it's a little bit harder to get. People are not as motivated to pick it up, but it is a powerhouse in so many decks. Not just mono black, but in competitive EDH. It's just so much fun watching these turns play out, because you know even if it isn't going to win them the game, it's going to be quite entertaining. And then we have number 1, Gaia's Cradle. I don't know if you guys heard of this card, it's pretty powerful. Lets you add 1 green mana for pretty much every creature you control. For every reason why Serra's Sanctum is a good card, Gaia's Cradle's even better because it sees way more play. It's pretty much the same land, and Gaia's Cradle deserves to be number 1, mostly because Tolarian Academy's banned. But everything else about the card, the explosiveness, it is just going to provide you with an ungodly amount of mana. And I really shouldn't have to explain why that's good in Commander. But anyway guys, that's going to do it for this video. Let me know what you think about Urza Saga. I might consider going back and doing other sets in the block, or other sets in general. Just a very powerful set, one of my favorites, and one that really has shaped the game into something special. You all have a wonderful day. Void here signing off. See you all next video.